This is the Kev Baker Show.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another live broadcast right here on the Kev Baker Show on your number one network, www.truthfrequencyradio.com. I'm absolutely buzzing about tonight's show. Our guest tonight is somebody who really did play a rather pivotal part in yours truly waking up. Because you all know out there that I spent time listening to Chris and Cherie, and one of their best guests that they used to get on, and I used to wait for this guest coming up week after week, would be Mr. Christopher Everard. So hold on to your hats, folks, because tonight you're going to get an hour of information download. But before we go to Chris, let's bring in Johnny Whistles. How are you doing, my good man?
I'm doing fine, Kev, thanks. Really looking forward to this. As you know, behind the scenes, we call Mr. Everard the encyclopedia or the library, because his knowledge, Kev, it's second to none, and I'm really looking forward to this.
Absolutely. And Johnny, you know, because we've got so much to get through tonight, we're going to shake things up a little, and we're going to get right into it. Don't worry, chat room, we still remember you are out there. But tonight we have got so much to get through. So let's bring on tonight's guest, a fellow host on Truth Frequency Radio. He's a researcher, an author, and a film director. And of course, this is Mr. Christopher Everard. And you can find his work at christophereverard.co.uk. Chris, welcome back after too long of a hiatus.
Hello, Kev. Hello, John. It's great to be with you guys.
Oh, it's absolutely brilliant to have you back on here on a Wookiee Wednesday, as we call it. Now, we're going to be covering a number of topics tonight, but you know, the whole political circus is in full swing over in the USA right now. Yeah. And in recent days, Chris, we've seen an uptick in incidents happening in Syria. Now, one politician that we're going to get into first of all, well, he has got his fingers in all of these pies, and that is John Kerry. Yeah. Now, you've been looking into this guy. Tell us about this one.
Right. Well, yeah, I've made two TV specials all about John Kerry and John Kerry's family on the Enigma channel. You know, this guy has been running the Obama administration. He was also really, in a way, running the second half of the George W. Bush administration as well. John Kerry, by his own admission, is a member of the Brotherhood of War. Now, they go under the most common name that they use is Skull and Bones. This is a Masonic organization. He joined, I think it was 1968, so you can see that he's been a member of this occult fraternity, which is based at High Street, New Haven, on the campus of Yale University. And by the way, anyone listening to Kev's show for the first time, I am not a conspiracy theorist. We're talking about conspiracy fact. Everything that I'm going to tell you, you can back it up. You can find all this stuff out yourself and a lot more. And he joined the Skull and Bones. George W. Bush was already a member. And like I say, this is a quasi-Masonic order, secret society, a brotherhood. They did use the name the Brotherhood of War back in the 1800s. They have had Howard Taft as a former member. Howard Taft went on to become the President of the United States of America. Then they had George Bush Sr. He went on to be the boss of the CIA. He ran the Ronald Reagan administrations because Ronald Reagan was really basically a semi-retired cowboy actor, even though he did have, you know, some interesting things to say. And then George Bush Sr. became President of the United States. And then George W. Bush, his son, he's also a member of the Skull and Bones. What I want to do in this show is really make it very clear, especially for the new people, the younger people that have awoken and have realized that everything that they're seeing on the mainstream news channels is really full of bias. And I want to do this show with you, Kev, because I think it's useful every couple of years or so to really show people that you don't need to make up stories. Truth is stranger than fiction, and these people really are, and I'm talking about the top politicians and the super rich aristocratic elite and the political class, they really are members of these brotherhoods and these sisterhoods.
Absolutely, Chris. And you know, it is important that we go over this because we're all at different stages in waking up. Some people tuning in tonight, like you say, will be entirely new to this. And another way they can think about what you've just said there, Chris, is out of a population of what, maybe 300 million, what are the odds of so many presidents making their way out of one club?
Well, there is a funny meme on Facebook. It's got all of the Miss Universes all lined up. And it says, hey, suckers, you know, you have to choose from 40 contestants for Miss Universe, but you only choose from 2 to become the President of the United States of America.
It's unbelievable, really, isn't it? I suppose you could compare those odds to the fact that most of our prime ministers come from that Bullingdon club.
Yes, absolutely. Well, you know, I mean, I've been following the Bullingdon situation just recently because I found a front page leader story that was published just a few years ago, really promoting David Cameron, who's obviously been pushed out of office now because of the massive, fantastic victory, which I think, Kev, you must take some credit for making Brexit such a victorious event. And this front page Daily Telegraph feature was really laying into, you know, the Labour Party and making them all look unelectable, which is one of their favourite words, and really promoting David Cameron. And it was written by a guy called Jonathan Ford. Well, I found out later on that he is one of those people sitting at the feet of David Cameron, the young David Cameron, next to Boris Johnson. And he's a lead features writer for the Daily Telegraph, otherwise known as the Daily Tory Graph, because it's really basically a mouthpiece of Her Majesty's Conservative Party.
Absolutely. And what do you make? I don't want to take you too far off your topics, but today in the media, Chris, we're being told that, get this, Tony Blair is ready to re-enter British politics.
Yeah, well, what happened with the BBC this morning, I got up at dawn and it was the second or third story on the main BBC radio news, and it said that he'd sent an email to his employees saying that he's winding down his business and he was going to concentrate on charitable stuff. Well, his business was really a carbon copy of the business that Henry Kissinger has been doing for many years. Henry Kissinger negotiated his way into a position of power in the old, you know, sort of in the 1960s, basically, during the Vietnam era. And then he left government. But what he did is that he was going out to businesses and saying, look, you pay me, I don't know what the fee is, just say, for example, $1 million, and I'll get you a meeting with the president, or I'll get you a meeting with the Secretary of State.
And Hillary Clinton, she's been caught selling access to the Chinese premier as well. This is all going on with all of them, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what they all do. And that is basically what Tony Blair has been doing. And he's made millions upon millions upon millions. Now, I actually had a set of photographs from Saint-Tropez and also from Cannes, which is not far from where I live. And he was looking, you know, all tanned and everything. And he was bobbing along going on a little boat from one luxury yacht to another a couple of years ago, down in Saint-Tropez, seeing, all kinds of weird and wonderful people. Some of the reports said that some of the people that Blair was, trying to get as clients were arms dealers.
Why does that not surprise me?
Well, I mean, you can see from the Freedom of Information Act documents and the tax returns of a lot of the congressmen and the tax returns from a lot of the senators in America, their published tax documents show what they've got invested, okay? And more than 50% of the senators are multimillionaires. They have at least $2 million. And when you look at those tax documents of what they declared, they really basically are making their money out of shares. And 9 times out of 10, they've got shares in companies like Lockheed Martin, Boston Dynamics, and all of the Pentagon contractors. So I just want to make this very clear. If there was a law that came in right now that said that politicians like Blair and Kerry are forbidden from buying shares in arms companies, by golly, that would contribute towards world peace like you would never believe, because they are obviously invading. They're obviously cooking up wars. They're obviously performing these NATO bombing runs on an hourly basis, because the shares that these politicians own in all the companies, it's not just the aircraft, it's not just the uniforms and the bullets, it's all the paraphernalia of war. They are making money out of it, and a lot of money. Dick Cheney, Halliburton, the Carlyle Group, which has got John Major as a former director, and the Bush family. This is their business. They are making money from war.
Absolutely. And Chris, is it a given that if you're wanting to enter these higher echelons of society, business, politics, that basically you have to join something like the Skull and Bones?
Well, yeah. What I would say about that, Kev, and I don't want the listeners to take this, in the wrong way. You've got basically more than half of all these secret societies, more than half of all these sisterhoods and brotherhoods are based on the Kabbalah. Okay, that's a Hebrew set of books such as the Zohar. And that has really been, the mainstay of this occult world that these politicians, the senators, the congressmen, royalty, aristocrats, bankers, judges, university dons, senior police officers, most of the time when they join a secret society, it has come from, its roots are more or less with the Kabbalah.
And this Kabbalah, we see the top pop artists like Madonna, she's into it. And would it be fair to say then, Chris, that a part of the Kabbalah magic is rituals, and in particular, sacrificial rituals?
Well, now, when you're talking about the ancient sacrificial kind of magical rituals where an animal or a person is killed on the altar and their blood is allowed to kind of smother and cover the altar to appease a certain god, that is really a more ancient, that is way before the Kabbalah, okay? That goes way back, and that is a kind of very ancient Judeo-Babylonian kind of Satanism, really, even though back in those days, I don't think they were using the word Satan. They had a kind of panorama of different gods, and some of those gods were horned gods like Cernunnos. But when you look at the gods of the Roman Empire, and there's a documentary which I filmed in a deconsecrated church in the south of France on the Enigma channel, where they dug up a lot of these altar stones and tombstones from the rich Roman elite who were living in the Mediterranean. You can see these really eerie, nasty, grotesque, half human, half animal kind of weird creatures carved into stone. And the Romans, they were worshipping 200, 300, 400 different types of demons, gods. It was a real kind of hodgepodge of paganism, witchery. They had cursing tablets. There were some found in the British city of Bath in the west of England. What we're really dealing with sacrifice is a much more ancient form of appeasing the spirits, or to attract a demon, you would kill a child, or you would throw a newborn baby, into a fiery pit. And very often in the Middle Eastern region, the god that they used to kill their firstborn children to was Molech. Now, Molech is not an owl. Molech is half human and half bull, and he is one of these horned gods. And the statues of Molech had a kind of blast furnace built into the stomach, and people used to throw their firstborn baby in there. People, when I say this, they go, wow, why would they do that? How on earth can they bring themselves to kill their first child? What it is that these brotherhoods run the show today behind the scenes. Clinton, Kerry, Bush, the aristocrats of the black nobility of Europe, the Italian mafia, Masonic networks. That is what we have today, and it was no different in the ancient world.
Chris, would it be fair to say that if we go back to those ancient times, are we following like a bloodline through history here?
Well, there are several bloodlines, actually. From that Judeo-Babylonian period, we then saw the creation of Israel, which was more or less split into two kind of nations. The southern part was called Judah. And they fanned out, into Europe. In actual fact, there isn't really much in terms of their bloodline from the Middle Eastern region, because there was some research done on the blood groups of Hebrew families in Europe, and they actually are really basically European. Their claim to Israel, their claim to that land is kind of bogus, because their genetic kind of heritage was lost. And in actual fact, you've got Sephardic Jewish people who were from Spain and from northern Morocco. The Ashkenazis are the German Hebrew families. It is mainly the Spanish and the German Hebrew bloodlines who have now populated Israel, and also the ones from Poland and Russia as well.
Wow, and I think, Johnny, you've got something to kind of ask or mention at this point as well, don't you?
Yeah, it's just to mention the fact that they actually do this today at Bohemian Grove, although it's a simulation, but it's just exactly what you've been talking about, Chris.
Bohemian Grove is like a summer camp that's run by the Bohemian Club. And the Bohemian Club is based in San Francisco. It's a gentleman's club. It costs quite a lot of money to be a member, and there's a very long waiting list. They have their own Egyptian mummy, by the way. They have a 5,000-year-old real, authentic Egyptian mummy in their offices called Lady Isis. And they have a model of a very famous Greek sculpture called the Owl of Minerva. And the reason that they have the Owl of Minerva is because that was one of the original symbols of the Bavarian Illuminati. So they are, they are Illuminists, if you like, but at the same time, it's also a social gathering The Bohemian Club has been popular with the homosexual community within San Francisco over many years. And who visited the Bohemian Club? And they put on a special show for them, the Queen of England and Duke of Edinburgh. They actually put on a special show for them when the Queen visited their headquarters when she visited San Francisco.
Wow. Now, in the name of not appearing to be sexist, we're talking about a lot of the brotherhoods here. I'm living in Scotland. I've got Kim Jong-Sturgeon as my leader. We've got Theresa May down in London. We've got Merkel. We have got Le Pen rising in France. And we possibly might have Hillary Clinton. Sisterhoods, Chris.
Yes, there are sisterhoods, and there's also Masonic brotherhoods and Satanic brotherhoods that do actually accept female members. There's no question about it. On the nursery slopes of the occult, many female politicians in America are members of the Eastern Star. Then you have all of the female politicians in America who are Mormons. Now, Mormonism is actually a flavor of Freemasonry. Their symbolism is very similar, and Joseph Smith, I've got his copies of his original papers where he's drawing sigils to actually bring through demons and spirits to help him locate buried seams of gold and gold nuggets. Mormonism is a fusion of spiritualism, mumbo jumbo that was made up by Joseph Smith, and Freemasonry. In actual fact, they use many of the Masonic symbols. So, women are involved in that. But in Europe, there is many, many women involved in Satanism. There was a deathbed confession of the Australian leader of the Ordo Templi Orientis, which started off as a German cult. This guy was called Peter Narsagonen, and there were many, many so-called scarlet women who were making a lot of money, actually. They joined these satanic cults, and the women play a pretty important role because what they do is they target heterosexual businessmen, millionaires, and they target heterosexual politicians. And, these girls go in, these scarlet women go in, and they're honey traps, and they try and get photographs, that compromise that person. Okay. And, also they give birth to unregistered babies within these cults. I mean, this has been going on for so long. It goes all the way back to, Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, a lot of the temples used to have a temple prostitute who was on duty 24 hours a day because, sex and sex magic and summoning spirits at the point of orgasm. I know this sounds very strange to listeners if they haven't, come across this before, but believe me, this is a big mainstay of the occult underground. And when I say the occult underground, I've interviewed people, and you can see on the Enigma channel, you can see interviews with people who were taken to stately homes, which cost tens of millions of pounds, and they witnessed people being sacrificed like tramps. They grab homeless people off the streets, children, and the aristocrats were in charge of these rituals. Not just men, but women as well.
And, as Chris said at the start, this is no conspiracy theory.
No.
There's confessions, there's writings about this. And it appears to me, Chris, that where this kind of energy goes when they have these rituals or whatever they're doing, their magical ceremonies, it also brings power and finance. Now, they're obviously doing the bidding for something. The thing is that like I say, you've got a lot of brotherhoods and sisterhoods based on the Kabbalah. It is really, the sacrificial societies and the satanic societies, they are following ancient Judeo-Babylonian rituals. And so therefore, people who are well connected,
who might make a good blackmail victim who are coming from a Hebrew family background are usually top of the list to be recruited.
There you go.
In actual fact, Freemasonry, a lot of the words in Freemasonry and a lot of the passwords are actually in Hebrew, because the rituals themselves, they say they come from Egypt. But in actual fact, the Egyptian pharaohs were paying Hebrew magicians to do rituals.
There you go, folks. And did I promise you that this would be an information download? Check out Chris's work over at christophereverard.co.uk and catch him every Sunday right here on TFR.
This is the Camp Baker Show.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to an information-filled hour right here on the Kev Baker Show with our special guest, the simply amazing Christopher Everard. You can find him over at christophereverard.co.uk. Now, I just have to reiterate before we go back to Chris how important it is that we go over all of this information periodically, because being an ex-soldier, I know the importance of knowing your enemy. And to understand what we're up against here, we really need to know the mindset of these people. And that is why me personally and Johnny and all of you out there are so lucky that we've got somebody, the library, the encyclopedia that Mr. Everard is, to share this info. So, Chris, I can't thank you enough, but I don't want to waste any more time, sir. Let's get right back into it.
Okay, well, what I'd like to start off this second segment of the show with is to read a little quote from a book about MI5, okay? Now, the original logo of MI5 is a pyramid with the eye in the capstone. I don't know whether you've seen that, but that was their original logo.
Oh, yes.
So this is a book all about MI5, and I just want to, I'll kind of skip some of the bits of it. I don't want to make it too long. But this is a book about Her Majesty's Intelligence Service, and this is what it says. It's talking about Maxwell Knight, okay, and he was one of the spy masters of MI5. And it says, occult rites, that's occult rituals, especially sexual ones, produced excellent opportunities for blackmail. There are let me just see here. There are hints of something like this going on in a report Soviet mole Kim Philby sent to his Moscow controller in 1942. Kim Philby noted that SIS, that's really the Secret Intelligence Service, that's MI6, MI5, and some of the other intelligence services as well, like GCHQ. Kim Philby, who was basically a traitor, he was a homosexual chap who gave away a lot of secrets to the Russians. Kim Philby noted that SIS was investigating a complicated racket that linked Royal Air Force officers and members of British high society to drug smuggling, sexual orgies, both hetero and homo, and black masses. That's where it's like the Catholic Mass, but they read the Mass backwards and everybody is dressed in long black robes. Behind this scheme was the German embassy in Dublin in Ireland, which ran drugs into England with the aid of Welsh fishermen. In Dublin, it's a diddle-a-diddle-a-da. It says they ran drugs into England with the aid of these Welsh fishermen. The dope, orgies, gambling, and black masses were used to blackmail officers into supplying information, supplying information, and it said in amongst this crowd were ladies, scarlet ladies, countesses, wing commanders, and pornographers. And there was also the Soviet ambassador, Ivan Mesky, and the notorious occultist, Aleister Crowley. And this is a book about MI5. I've got a whole big library. I've got more than 5,500 books. I've got another book, which I'll just pick up here.
And, you know, for the listeners out there, you can think about Bill Clinton and the CIA drug run into
absolutely,
Arkansas.
absolutely. Yeah. I've got another book here called The Official History of Her Majesty's Intelligence Service. Now, you know, you can't, if you're an intelligence officer and you want to write a book like this, it has to be vetted because everyone has to sign the Official Secrets Act. This stuff can be bought, okay, and they're admitting it, and it's actually gone through the scrutiny. Can you imagine what's really going on?
Exactly, Chris. Behind
it's
closed doors,
unbelievable.
The mind would boggle.
Yeah, what I want to say to the listeners, and this is really like the kind of payoff of this particular broadcast, because we only have an hour together, is that, yeah, ancient sacrifice was a big thing. You sacrificed your firstborn baby because the Brotherhood were in charge, and you did it because you had to show them that you were mega loyal. Your loyalty, even to the point where you would slit the throat of a baby or kill your own child, was I suppose the kind of secret lever or the secret ticket for you to become one of their high-paid puppets and mouthpieces. That's the ancient world. It's not changed, Kev.
No,
that is exactly what's going on now. And I just want to quote a letter that was sent by Hillary Clinton to a chap called Haim Sarban. Haim Sarban, he was a bass player in a rock band. He built up his own kind of media empire back in the 1960s. He is the man behind the mighty Power Rangers. He owns several TV networks now. He produces television shows for children. He's a part share owner or a former share owner of Fox Kids channel, which was sold to Walt Disney Company, and they renamed it ABC Kids. And he gives a lot of money to the Democrats. He gives a lot of money to the Republicans. It's quite common for these very wealthy people to give money to both sides. Hillary Clinton writes a letter to Haim Sarban, and she says in this letter, by the way, she writes two letters, and this is one of them, and she says, really, that the Israeli government didn't do enough, and she's referring to Operation Protective Edge, which caused thousands of civilians, thousands of Palestinians to have their homes blown to smithereens with tanks. And in this letter, she vows to Haim Sarban, who's this very successful, wealthy Israeli businessman, that if she becomes president, she would support the killing of 200,000 Gaza civilians. This is on the scale of Pol Pot, Himmler, Hitler, and Mao Zedong. And this is what we saw in the ancient world as well. If you were willing to kill a child to show your loyalty to the Brotherhood, they would promote you up the rungs of promotion.
And, you know, just sticking with Hillary for a moment, I mean, Ben Carson, in the recent debates on the presidential run, he was talking about one of Hillary Clinton's mentors, Saul Alinsky.
Saul Alinsky,
yeah. He wrote a book called Rules for Radicals, and it actually acknowledges Lucifer as the original radical. It shows the mindset of Hillary, if that's one of her mentors.
He is, and he's also the mentor of Barack Obama. In actual fact, the book Rules for Radicals, I've got a copy here. The entire book is dedicated to Lucifer. The entire book is dedicated to Lucifer.
Incredible.
And you know,
And
the
it is
listeners,
Barack Obama's biggest kind of political treatise that really, got him, into politics.
and you know, folks, just think about that. A current president and possibly a potential next president idolizing somebody who was so into Lucifer. Very telling, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. And she's writing letters saying, if you donate to me and support me in my campaign, and I become president, I'm going to vow and give you all of the moral support so that you can go and kill 200,000 civilians. Not only that, but we had a question, at the dispatch box in, I think it was Prime Minister's question time, to Theresa May. This only happened a few days ago. Would you use a British nuclear weapon if it meant the killing of 100,000 women and children as collateral damage?
She didn't even pause, Chris.
No, and she said yes.
Yep.
That's 100,000. She's willing to kill 100,000 innocent collateral damage civilians, and Hillary Clinton's willing to kill 200,000. I just want to make this clear, okay? Theresa May has no children, not that we know of anyway. Her Wikipedia entry and also her Debrett's peerage entry for her education for her school years is very sketchy. We don't know anything about this woman. We know that she has a Jewish surname, which is May. We don't really, she's meant to be a Roman Catholic, but as I've said on previous shows, Roman Catholicism was infiltrated by a Judeo-Babylonian cult that were very loyal to a guy called Shabbatai Zevi, who was really basically throwing all of the rules and the life code of the Judaism, traditional Judaism, on its head, and he inverted the 10 Commandments. So, "Thou shalt not kill" became "Thou shalt kill." He had incestuous relations with his daughter. They held orgies with children, and this guy was based in Izmir in Turkey. And then the Zevites, as they became known, got taken over by a guy called Jacob Frank, who was a baron who lived in Offenbach in Germany. And this guy was best friends with many members of the Bavarian Illuminati. And he was friends, by the way, with the Marquis de Sade. And that's where the word sadism comes from. If you read Marquis de Sade's books, you can see that he's getting a lot of pleasure from sexual torture of children, and he's a member of the aristocracy. And a lot of people don't know this, but the Marquis de Sade was a member of Adam Weishaupt's Bavarian Illuminati. And the Bastille Day celebration, when the actual main Bastille prison was broken in the French Revolution, that was all organized to spring the Marquis de Sade out of jail. He wasn't actually in prison in Paris. He was in another prison. But, they staged the French Revolution to basically free up these aristocrats. These people are sadists. They are Satanists. They are sacrificing animals and sacrificing humans. It's been going on for thousands of years. It's now gone on to an industrial scale, because when they go and they bomb Libya, and Libya is just one example, on the presupposition that they are going to give freedom to the Libyan people, the first people that they killed were the granddaughters of Colonel Gaddafi. That's so that he was psychologically terrorized. Hillary Clinton was caught on camera. She had a text message come through her phone saying, "We've killed Gaddafi." And she clicked her phone off and she said, "We came, we saw, he died. Ha 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 ha.
And it was such an evil, sinister laugh.
Yeah, I
and
mean,
it was a
Gaddafi was a guy that came to power from a coup anyway. I mean, none of these world leaders are whiter than white. But, after they've been in power for like more than 20 years, they tend to soften down a bit. They tend not to be so dictatorial. And Gaddafi was actually making the desert bloom. He'd got water resources under control. He got the oil under control. The guy wasn't a butterfly collector, but,
yeah,
they
statues
went
of
in
him
there.
in Uganda and things like that, Chris, because of the work he was doing throughout Africa.
Yeah, well, I mean, being an oil-rich nation, obviously he had resources to be able to spread his tentacles of influence. Like I say, I don't really rate Gaddafi as a great man, but having said that, they actually went in there and they supposedly were liberating the Libyan people. Do you think that a woman like Hillary Clinton, who is vowing her support to kill 200,000 civilians, do you think that she really cares anything about Libyan people?
Exactly.
Do you really think that John Kerry is trying to broker a ceasefire in Syria because he cares about Syrian people? His real name, his real family name is Cohn, K-O-H-N. His family come from a Hebrew family background, like all of these top politicians. The bombing that's happening in Syria only benefits one nation, and that's Israel.
And Chris, just sticking with that bombing for the moment, because that's very topical right now.
Oh, yeah.
We had the West coming out, as they do, and immediately blaming Russia for attacking a UN convoy. But that isn't the whole story. In fact, it's far from the truth. No.
There was a predator, a CIA-controlled predator that was being controlled from Charlottesville in the USA. I believe that the aid convoy was a stooge convoy. I think it was full of weapons anyway. And the ceasefire was a complete and utter scam. And we've seen this scam many times before. The USA and the UK get together and they say, let's have a ceasefire. So everybody agrees to a ceasefire, thinking this is the first step to peace. And during the ceasefire, what they do is they send in so-called UN aid convoys. And what they are is they're just full of chemical weapons and guns and God knows what, or they're smuggling agents into the situation or smuggling agents out.
And if we go back a week, Chris, we can see that we had an attack on the Syrian army by US fighter jets. And even over in the Russian Duma, they were shouting and exposing the fact that right now the US Air Force, they're acting as air cover for ISIS.
Yeah, ISIS is completely manufactured. And, I had my suspicions before, but I think that on a previous show, there were some computer geek kind of people, and they managed to trace some of the original ISIS tweets back to an IP address in Tothill Street in London, which is where you've got the Department of Work and Pensions, you've got the St Ermin's Hotel, which is a recruiting hotel for MI5 and MI6, you've got David Cameron's old office, you've got Tory Party Central Office, you've got Scotland Yard. They're all clustered around this road where the tweets that are supposedly coming from ISIS come from.
It's
all a scam.
Yeah, from within the web of deceit that is government and all these alphabet agencies.
Yeah, you have to remember that the Arab Spring, which was triggered in Tunisia, was a big nightmare for these kind of evil, oil-grabbing kind of nasty people at the top of the establishment because, if you've got a crazy person or a semi-crazy person like Idi Amin in charge of a country, you can easily invade that country by saying, we're liberating the people and he was a dictator. When democracy started to come along with the Arab Spring, they had to create ISIS. They had to throw Tunisia and Algeria and Libya and all these Arabian nations into chaos, because if those nations got democracy and they had proper constitutions and they had proper rule of law, then the people would start to grow their economies. And, nowadays economies grow very, very quickly. Remember, a lot of those nations are oil rich, or they buy oil very cheaply from fellow Islamic countries. And the establishment, I'm talking about the royal elite, the royal Bavarian British aristocracy, who really are the richest people on the planet and run the show and give Obama his orders and give John Kerry his orders. They had to invent ISIS because otherwise they would end up with tiger economies right in the Middle East, and the price of oil would shoot up and they wouldn't be able to steal the oil.
Now, Chris, one country that sits right in the middle of everything that's going on right now in Syria is, of course, Russia. And you're probably the most educated guy when it comes to the connections between all these powerful people.
Yeah.
And in the conspiracy analyst world that we find ourselves, there seems to be a back and forth. Is Putin good? Is he bad?
Yeah.
Now, he comes from the FSB. He's no angel. But what's your take? Is he one of the club? Is he in these secret societies?
Yes, I mean, he, like you say, he's a former lieutenant in the FSB. The FSB is like the new version of the KGB. When Putin started his career as a spy, and by the way, Angela Merkel was a spy. She was a spy for the Stasi, Eastern German Gestapo. Okay. Many of these politicians have links to the intelligence network. Nigel Lawson, he was a high up in the Tory government a few years ago. We discovered that he had links to MI6. It goes on and on and on. George Bush Sr. was the president of the United States. He was previously the boss of the CIA. I mean, the intelligence services go hand in hand with these top political jobs. Okay. Now, Putin is no different. All right. When Putin started his career as a young officer, even before he was a lieutenant, it was the KGB. And the KGB had the Lubyanka building, which everybody hated because literally hundreds of thousands of people have been dragged into that building. Now, who was controlling the KGB in the early years when Putin started his training? It was the old Kremlin, kind of communist set. And these people were basically Marxists. Karl Marx lived in London and he was Jewish. Leon Trotsky, the Trotskyists, Leon Trotsky lived in Manhattan. He was very wealthy and he was Jewish as well. Hardly none of those Kremlin superiors or communist kind of iconic leaders, hardly none of them came from Russia. They all came from countries outside of Russia. Communism is a construct. It's a fake paradigm that was created because there was a grassroots people power movement that was putting pressure on the royal czars, who are the cousins of our British royal family. You can see pictures of the old King George and Tsar Nicholas II. They look like identical twins. That's because they have, the same grandparents. And this grassroots movement was putting them under a lot of pressure because people were starving. People were queuing up in Russia. There was no bread. Food was rotting before it had been delivered from one side of the country to the other. And so the grassroots movements wanted to have, proper democracy. So what the Tsars did is they created communism. And communism is as fake as anything you can ever imagine. It's always been fake. And, what happened is that they got serial killers, mass murderers. Some of the biggest mass murderers in history are actually communist soldiers. And they gave them unlimited amounts of ammunition, unlimited amounts of guns. And these people, and I have to say this, many of them were Jewish because the oligarchy, the establishment in the communist system, they were also Jewish. Some of those killers killed 100,000 people with machine guns. They depopulated Russia and they threw into jail the people that wanted democracy. They terrorized the Russian population using homegrown terrorist groups, and they fractionalized the whole of the Russian community. And Putin is a product of that. Now, look at RT, Russia Today. Many people got the wrong idea about Russia Today. Russia Today, if you remember, had arguments with 2 or 3 of their major presenters when Russia tried to stop the democratic Maidan Square campaign in the Ukraine. Okay, Russia, the modern Russia now is being allowed to be capitalized because the rest of the Western world has actually managed to reach a certain plateau on the stock market, and now Russia is being capitalized. Prices are going up, wages aren't going up that fast, and people in Lithuania, Estonia, and all of the former Soviet satellite countries like Romania and Bulgaria, these people are coming to Britain. They're contacting me when they see my films and they see my documentaries on the Enigma channel, and they're going, holy cow, our parents were screwed. Well, this is all a scam.
Chris, we're almost out of time. And talking of your films, how do you fancy coming back next week to get into the energy grid? I'm shameless.
I absolutely, because I've just finished a series called The Spy Files. And SPY, SPI, stands for Strange Phenomena Investigated.
So a week tonight, folks, Mr. Everard will be back here. ChristopherEverard.co.uk. And some really big news. Tomorrow night, one of our sisters, Lucky, she will be live with her show before the Kev Baker show, right here on Truth Frequency Radio. So, folks, I hope you enjoyed that. You can go and pour your brain back in. And wherever you are, make it TFR.